Welcome back. So let's just have a look at our first thing that we want to accomplish in Angular in my case. And that's going to be actually getting from the REST API, getting all customers in my case. Now that could be anything, any entity you guys need. It could be pets, getting all orders, getting all products, whatever you guys need to get from the backend. That's what we're going to try to achieve in this lesson right here. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out how do we actually create a HTTP request of the type GET. That's what we need to do in Angular. But let's first of all do it from Postman just to make sure we still have access to some data in our backend. So let's just jump into Postman right here. And in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a GET request, and I'm going to send it to, in my case, this URL, which is my backend. And there I want to go to API and customers to get all customers back, right? And I'm sending with the content type of application JSON, and that's pretty much all I had to do. Now when I send the request, I'm sending an HTTP GET request to the backend, and I get JSON back looking something like this. We have an array, and there we have these different areas. Just like you've seen in the other series, that's how you get the data back. But how do we do it inside Angular? Now if we jump back to Angular.io right here, and we find the docs, and we find tutorial and HTTP, they have a pretty strong guide right here about how to use HTTP in their hero tutorial. We can use a lot of that. I'm going to skip a bit of it because we just want to get to the good stuff where it's about getting real data from a real backend. But the first thing you need to notice is to even use this, we have to have a new module. Just like we did when we used reactive forms, we had to have a module for forms. Now we also need a module to work with their HTTP client. So I'm going to grab this module right here, jumping into my code, going all the way down to app module TS file, and there I'm going to add this HTTP client module because that's what I want to start using, right? And here we have the reactive form modules that you used in the earlier videos. Sweet. So now that guy's imported and is ready to be used inside my system. That was step one. Now let's just scroll further down. They start talking about, as the next part of this series right here, they talk about simulating a data server. Now we don't need to do that because we actually have a data server, but this could be good for testing purposes. So you can go and read this if you kind of want to figure out how you can use in-memory data service. So you will kind of make, instead of just a simple list like we did in the videos, you'll make an actual real API. That can be helpful in certain situations. So go and read this if you want to. I'm just going to scroll further down and actually get to the point that says heroes and HTTP. You can also find it over here if you want to move down there. Because this is where we actually start using the HTTP client the first time. And again, I'm going to skip the first part because I want to get to the place where we actually go and grab the heroes. And that's all the way down here where they actually do their first request to get heroes. We're going to do the same now with customers. And luckily it's very simple for us to do it. So let's try and jump into the code right here, and let's just try and find our customer service, because that's where we want to make the change. So here what we're going to do is we're going to do a private, just like they do in the example, and I'll just call it HTTP in my case, just like they do in the example, and then I'll make an HTTP client right here, which is their way of, again, communicating with some kind of HTTP request setup. And here I'm going to use the HTTP client from Angular. Don't use the Selenium one. That's for testing. I'm going to use this guy. So yoink, there we go. Now I have HTTP available, and I can start working and calling customers through HTTP. Sweet. How do we actually do this? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this HTTP to kind of get to that HTTP client. And there you can actually start doing, and you should recognize a lot of these methods you can use. Notice there's a GET request. As I keep going down, there's a delete request. There is a head, but there's also a patch request, a post request, put request, and that's pretty much all the requests we need. So this is kind of a predefined way of doing the exact same thing that we did inside Postman. So we have the same request types as you use in Postman. Right? So the HTTP client is a way for you to kind of do each of these requests. Perfect. We want to do a GET request. Now the cool thing with the GET request is actually that we need to now do a GET request and convert that data into JSON, right? From JSON into some kind of object that we build ourselves. So we built a customer object. So I want this customer service to take the JSON automatically. Remember, you get just JSON like this. I want to take that JSON and convert it just like we did in C#. I want to convert that JSON into customer objects, even a customer array. So I need to explain that to the system, and you do that by using this upper, lower, and in here you can actually now specify what you expect you get back. And I expect in my case that the JSON I get back is actually a customer array. So let's just go back and have a look at the JSON. Notice it's an array of customers, right? Now these properties in here have to match the properties that I see inside my customer, of course, so I won't map them automatically. So let's just have a look at the customer in the code right here, and notice they have the exact same names as they do in the JSON. That's why I can do this. So automatically by adding this lower than, bigger than sign and putting in the customer array here, it'll try to map it for me into a customer array. Now I need one more thing to kind of do the GET request, right? I need to go in here and explain where do we want to get it from. So I need to add a URL, a path to my REST API. Let's try and figure out how we can do that. So I need the URL. In my case, this is the URL. Now I could just hard code this, and we are actually going to hard code this first lesson right here. I'm just going to grab it and just copy it in as hard coded value. There we go. So now it knows the area where I should go and get my customers. Let's just new line this so you can see it easier. So now we know where to go as well, and that's pretty much all I had to do to kind of make the request. So let's just end it for here. This is not going to result in any data yet. There's not going to be any change yet in your code, but this is what you have to do to kind of use the HTTP request, or to set it up at least. Next lesson we're going to try and use the data we get back and actually return that data. So that's it for this lesson. See you next time. Have fun.